Hello. Our ICAN on Air session of today is packaged for a great time of insight, of discovery, and empowerment as we examine the topic, the role of retail financial services providers in developing the Nigerian entrepreneurial business segment itself in our country and beyond. Our discussant in our guest interview segment on this show is Segun Akintemi, Esquire, CEO of Page Financials. Segun has had 30 years of experience in banking and financial services industry. Tried and tested. Segun Akintemi, Esquire has niched integrity, consistency, problem solving, and value partnering in the financial entrepreneurial space in Nigeria. We will unveil our guests to you on this program shortly. Also on this program, we are going to be availing you of information on adverts, a bit of social diary on what ICAN on Air is all about, and a few announcements. Please stay connected to the program as we shall be back with you shortly. Welcome, Segun, to ICAN on Air. And
thank you very much, sir.
I will just shoot and decide that we're going to ask you to give us a general overview on that subject that we have advertised, which is the role of retail financial providers in developing the Nigerian entrepreneurial business. We know Nigerians are said to be very entrepreneurial, and we see this in the number of businesses being run across the spectrum of micro, small, medium-sized enterprises in our country. What role, by way of just giving us a synopsis in a captured form, will you say this sector plays in economic development?
Thank you very much, sir. And I thank ICAN for having me on this program, which I think it's a very useful means of ensuring that people are kept abreast of what is happening in the environment and they're deriving value from learning. I think the SMEs today, they account for about 90% of firms worldwide, with a lot of them located in very, very strong and developing economies. They play a very critical role in the global economy, as they are the most significant contributors, particularly one, to employment, because they recruit a lot of people to generate majority of jobs in this environment. Now, if you look at Nigeria, they are a substantial contributor to, I would say, overall value add, contributing as much as about 50% to the GDP of the economy. So if you look at things from that perspective, SMEs are actually the backbone of economic development and a key factor for social stability within the environment within which we operate. So that would be my a bit of a wrapped up introduction.
Thank you very much, Mr. Segun Akintemi, and to you specifically as a major player in retail financing. We know that you must have a lot of interaction with entrepreneurs naturally. What are the key challenges SMEs face in executing their role as economic developers?
That's an interesting one, sir, because it's a very critical one and it's a question that I'm always being asked. And I would respond from different perspectives. One of the major things that SMEs have or they face is inadequate accessibility to credit or the high cost of credit. So a lot of SMEs don't even have access to loans. So they can't even borrow to be able to grow their business. And in some instances where the access is available, the cost of credit is also an issue because they probably won't get money at the rate at which the likes of Nestle and the big ones are getting it from banks. So they will have to probably resort to finance company and all these money lenders who will be charging them an arm and a leg for this credit. The second is collateral requirements. A lot of times SMEs do not have collaterals. So what they have is just their basic cash flow that they can see, which in most times is not adequate for the volume of transactions they want to do. Third, I would say is inadequate basic infrastructure. Because of course, like, power, roads and all these infrastructures, they are major factors for us in this country. And of course, that has a very strong effect on SMEs because a lot of them are producing things that are perishable, which they are not able to actually provide cooling for instance, for power. A lot of them actually transit from one village to another with the state of our roads that is begging for attention. Now, the fourth thing is what I call multiple taxations. A lot of times, tax becomes a problem where they have to move their goods and services, and that is not well taken care of. Another point is management. A lot of our SMEs do not understand the concept of management, and by virtue of that, they are not able to draw a line between what is theirs and what is the business's, and at what point would those things cross. Then again, there's also the issue of unstable policy environment. I'm sure you know the environment within which you operate. There's always policies of assault, and it's so frequent now that it's actually very, very bad. Another point we would need to be paying a lot of attention to now is the issue of insecurity. Insecurity also remains a major issue, and that affects almost every cadre of business in Nigeria. So in summary, I think those are the factors that I would say have been major challenges to SMEs within the context of Nigeria.
Very, very interesting points that you have raised there. Capsular in a form. But you see, these challenges that you have just eloquently described requires, of course, both government intervention and support from the private sector, naturally. As a prominent player in the financial sector, what do you think the role of retail financial providers is in supporting Nigerian entrepreneurs? And how can they be more supportive of their businesses?
Okay, so thank you, sir. There's so much that the retail financial providers can do, particularly when they come together as a strong force. But in looking at their own specific role, I think they act as a financial intermediary between the surplus and the deficit segments of the economy. So very, very simple. They serve as a bridge between those that have and those that don't have, and they're able to actually bridge that gap. Now, in playing the role, they hold a very vital responsibility of identifying the most value generating opportunities and ensuring that that is also deployed, particularly in terms of capital, to those opportunities. Now, it's imperative really that retail financial providers understudy businesses and identify the ones that are that have growth potentials. Because if they don't, then it will be a waste of energy and time and money. And after identifying those with strong growth potential, then they need to back them up with adequate funding and, which is very critical, financial education. Because that is something that is lacking very, very much today. Now, you see that some banks and finance companies are already leading this charge in terms of advertising offerings for SMEs. Banks have come on air and have started advertising so many different options in terms of what is available in the market and what SMEs can access. Because they've now gradually seen that a lot of SME programs and products, they are actually available within the banks. Accessibility and interest rates on loans. An average SMEs want to do his business on his mobile app, wants to do his business on his internet banking, and every channel you can imagine. So there are multiple channels available for them to offer service. And of course, what is also important is feedback, a strong feedback mechanism through customer service. So an opportunity to handle and deal with customer relationships, that is also very, very important. So I think these are things that we cannot do as what I would call a financial intermediary that would actually ease a lot of the pain that SMEs are going through. So.
Excellent and great point. Basically, you have mentioned these challenges, and I wanted to go into a bit of a details that as a retail finance provider, of course, to perform this role that you have carved for yourself in developing Nigerian entrepreneurial business space, how can the effect of these challenges be minimized? I recognize that they cannot be totally wiped out, but can they be minimized, and how?
Thank you, sir. It's a major challenge in terms of talking about elimination might be almost impossible, but in terms of minimizing it, I would say I'll start with lack of credit information, and this is a major factor that contributes to the constraints that a lot of SMEs are faced with today, because it's very difficult for me as a financial service provider to assess the creditworthiness of an SME. And this is a major challenge, because if I cannot measure your creditworthiness, there's no way I'll be able to give you money. So creditworthiness remains a very, very big challenge. Now, compared to the big firms, small SMEs is a bit more difficult, for instance, for them to develop a credit history over time. As one, they have, I would say, less access to traditional sources of finance, meaning that a lot of them don't even bank their monies or even run through the financial services system, such that there is no way to track their credit history. So unlike the big companies who run every transaction through the bank. So again, SMEs don't generally have access to fixed assets, such as land, buildings, and all those things, which are the major things that an average bank or an average financial services sector player would ask for as a collateral to secure the loans. So instead, an average SME would probably rely on, I'll say, what we call movable assets to access finance, which is definitely challenging because if an asset is movable, that means that the SME can be very fluid. You are giving a loan on furniture and fittings, you come back in 2 weeks and everything is gone. So these are the two things I think we can deal with. SMEs can deliberately start paying attention to. Now, also finding alternatives to this traditional, what I call collateral based, because I call them collateral based, but we should start looking at them from a transactional based perspective. So when you look at a credit, you are looking first more at the transaction dynamics and the potentials therein, as against looking at, oh, I have a collateral and that gives me comfort. Now, there's also a collateral registry, which, of course, the government is promoting to provide some kind of legal protection to which, and for us, this would enable a lot of the SMEs access the resources that they require. And I think going back to this sharing the credit information, this is very, very, very important because we have our credit bureaus, we have our credit registries that can help reduce the asymmetry of information, let me put it that way, between the lenders and the borrowers. And I think these things would help lenders make very more informed decisions in terms of funding each business on a case-by-case basis.
Excellent. My inquiry was to look at it from the perspective of you, the finance in the financial sector. Of course, naturally, yes, business owners who are having difficulty in accessing this business credit finance too should be doing some things yes, also to be seen, to be, raising the bar. What are some of the things that you will prescribe that business owners can do to better position their businesses for credit finance?
Very interesting, sir. There are quite a few things they can do to improve upon themselves. But I'll look at it from the following. I think first is structure. A lot of SMEs do not have structures. And I'm not saying structures of having an organogram, CEO, head of internal control, and all those structures. No. But even the basic structure of, so for instance, one, bookkeeping. A lot of them don't have that decent process of keeping their books, registering sales, registering expenses, registering those basic things. They don't have it. So that is one major problem. And if they don't do things like even their compensation. You'll be shocked that a lot of SMEs the owners just dip their hands in the pockets as a need basis. So there's no Chinese wall between the funds of the owners and the funds of the business. Then accounts management too. A lot of them, you ask them, okay, can we even see your financial accounts for year end last year? They don't have it. How much more ask them for a management account, which is a more current thing? So that is a problem. Do they keep records of even inventories? Some of them, you say, okay, you want to use their stock. Do you do a stock hypothecation as security? They don't even have an inventory. They don't know what is in, what is out, and what is out that haven't been paid for. So there's no symmetry between their trade receivable and their trade payable. So they don't even know what is out. So it's a bit of a problem. The second point, apart from structure, is consistency. And consistency is very important in the line of business, particularly as it affects your turnover, as you do your business, as it affects what I call the transaction type. Because the truth is, an SME that doubles into a new line of business very often might actually find that it is difficult to secure a credit facility from that line of business because it's actually largely dependent on the risk therein. So if the risk is high, it might be very, very difficult. But if an SME is consistent in his line of business, he'll be able to build a constant track record, which makes it easier for financiers to actually position themselves to give them loans. Now, another point is what I would call viability. Entrepreneurs have to show very clearly that their businesses are viable and will remain a going concern in the long run, particularly in the years ahead. A lot of entrepreneurs cannot prove that. And if they cannot prove that to themselves first, how much more to someone that is going to invest? And they will be largely dependent on the future of the business to be able to repay the loan. So, and the truth is, this can be seen through their business model. If you look at the business model of an entrepreneur, you know whether it's viable or not. If you look at the strategy, you know, or even what we all talk about now, innovation, that's using technology or otherwise. If you look at them, you realize that these guys cannot withstand the test of time. So these three things are very, very critical. The structure, the consistency, and the viability of the business.
Excellent points. And so some of the things, we came through in financial management, looking at asset-based finance as being a prevalent option for financing for SMEs. Can you tell us more about this form of credit finance? I'm talking about asset-based finance.
Okay. Asset-based finance. Okay, let me put it this way. SMEs can actually get funding on the value of specific assets that they have. So accounts receivable, for instance, is actually an asset. So if you have receivables from a very strong blue chip company, then of course we can discount that and actually lend you money. Inventory, like I mentioned earlier, is a major source, because if you have good inventory, your stock is well recorded, your accounts are well documented, that could be a very comfortable asset. Machinery and equipment, rather than on their own credit standing, machinery and equipment is very, very useful. So those things could actually be valued, discounted, and you can actually use some borrowing to fund your business. And in this way, what it does for you is that it serves the needs even of very small ones and young firms that are having difficulty actually growing their business. And it's very, very useful because a lot of them don't have a track record. They have not built credit history, and as such, a lot of lenders would not even touch them with a long pole. So the asset-based lending actually provides a more flexible term than collateralized traditional lending, as these assets themselves can actually serve as security. But businesses seriously will need to make an equity contribution. What we call, you have to have a skin in the game, and you have to bear some of the risk. So you can't expect me to be the lender and just bear all the risk. You must actually have a skin in the game and actually contribute to the growth of the business.
Thank you very much, Mr. Akintemi. Now, in addressing the pain point of SMEs, especially regarding financing, like you have said, which they need to up their game, what will you recommend to business owners in a bid to support government and regulatory efforts?
Well, one is that they should be actually very open to, at this point, equity investment, because the truth is that equity is the best way to grow your business. Debt is fantastic if you have very good assets, like we mentioned earlier, but equity investment too actually makes a lot of difference. But the problem with equity investments, particularly with SMEs, is that equity investment requires a lot of transparency. So you have to be very, very open with your books. Your business plan have to be almost perfect in terms of accuracy. Your records, your account keeping, your bookkeeping has to be very, very perfect. So that discipline to be able to do all those things is a problem on its own. Secondly, they could also leverage a lot of what I'll call SME groups. There's no subsector in the SME business in this country that do not have what we call trade groups. And they lobby, they participate. Some of them even get involved in decision making at the regulatory level. So they need to also get themselves involved, such that as you gradually go on, you're able to build some flavor of what I call best practice. And as such, governance becomes easier, both from the perspective of government and, of course, to support the regulatory efforts. Because I'll tell you, from the regulatory perspective, is a lot of challenge for them today.
Excellent. Thank you very much for those insights, Mr. Akintemi. Okay, now let's for a moment assume that the challenge of finance by SME is resolved. Okay, well, at least minimized.
Yes.
Based on your interaction with these businesses, what 2 areas will you advise them to focus on for growth?
Oh, very, very thought-provoking question, sir. I think the first area remains finance. And finance from the perspective of the fact that that finance has to be supported with innovation on one side and collaboration on the other side. So that is the way I would look at it. So they must be able to innovate way ahead of their customers. So we cannot assume that we're just a small SME and yes, we'll stay comfortable where we are. No, they must be able to innovate through every process, every product they have. And that is where a lot of SMEs are failing today. They're not able to innovate through those businesses. And you'll be shocked, sir. Some of them don't even understand those businesses in depth. So if you cannot innovate through it, then you become a failure. The second part is collaboration. And I always preach collaboration because a lot of us think, oh, we are independent, we can stand alone, we can do things on our own. But that is a big joke. So collaboration is very, very critical. And you can collaborate, like I mentioned earlier, with government agencies. You can collaborate and partner with large corporates. You can collaborate with even your established SMEs, your colleagues, contemporaries, where they can get some value. Then, of course, there's collaboration with local partners. You can develop partnership with some entities locally and even abroad in terms of opportunities for growth. But you have to have an open mind. And the open mind would be supported through innovation and largely collaboration.
Thank you very much, Mr. Akintemi. And for our viewers who are just tuning in, yes, I've been guesting Mr. Segun Akintemi, the CEO of Page Finance. And we've been looking at the subjects of the role of retail financial providers in developing the Nigerian entrepreneurial businesses. And been giving a lot of insights on the challenges, areas of growth, and the fact that the discipline that we preach in the Institute for consistency, integrity, and accuracy is a sine qua non. Now, Mr. Akintemi, let's go a bit global. Of course, we know COVID-19 and the attendant Omicron variant has really disrupted the activities of SMEs. We agree, we see that. And with many of them having to disengage employees or completely shut down. And with some of these businesses just barely surviving the impact of the pandemic. What advice will you give to those who currently have unmet loans? I'm talking about unmet loan obligations and are unable to settle down.
Well, I would first appreciate what people have gone through. And I can tell you, sir, it's a difficult position even we as financiers or lenders are going through in terms of the reality, it's very tough coping with the impact of the pandemic. And I would say it's even been more predominant in 2021 than even 2020 itself, because the spillover has just started, we've just started feeling the effect. Now, I would say businesses that find themselves in this position, they have to be very strategic to ensure that the situation does not impair their creditworthiness. Because the truth is that this phase would pass. Now, if you don't ensure that you protect your creditworthiness during this phase, by the time the ill wind of COVID blows off, they will not be able to access credit if they don't manage their credit worthiness now. So they should ensure that whatever it takes, they should meet with the providers of the finance, and they should ensure that as much as possible, they are able to restructure their loans. The central bank has come up with so many incentives to support a lot of SMEs and a lot of the industries. And they've said that, look, SMEs can actually come and restructure their loan. Then they've even provided loans too to enable SMEs to continue to do business for growth. So it's important that they actually sit and go and restructure these loans. Some of the loans, the terms before COVID are totally unrealistic and unimplementable. So they should restructure. Two, they should also go back to their lenders. Some of them have multiple lenders. I think this is the best time for you to consolidate all your obligations into one. At least identify one of your partners. So for me, for instance, even as an institution, that's what I did. I identified one partner. And I said, look, let my debt be in one place. And I'll be able to drive more volume, and I'll be able to create more value for that lender. And the lender can in turn also support me as I weather the storm through this period. And it's even an advantage because that company is able to understand better your business from the track record you keep with them. And where such businesses also have liquid investments, they should consider converting some of these liquid investments to settle their obligation. Because the reality is that some of these liquid investments are just there. Some of them are wasting assets. So you can convert them, settle your obligation to avoid default, and you are still able to grow your business and grow well. So I think this might help, and we have practiced these little things over the last, I'll say, 12 to 18 months post-COVID. So, and that has helped a lot of our SMEs jumpstart their business. And some of them, you'll be surprised, they're actually even fully on their feet now, even better than where they were before COVID.
Mm-hmm. Yes, very, very, very interesting. And as ICAN, sometimes when you engage as consultants to some of these surplus units needing to put in their money, and to guarantee returns, one of the things they say, and sometimes they say it in vernacular, they say, can we trust? We put our money in banks, okay, we put our money in financial institutions. Sometimes they talk about money doublers. In a situation where they perceive that some of the operators live larger than life, question is, can we trust to the extent that my money will continually be safe? What are the guarantees that this can, what are the guarantees that can be given? And I'm sure you must have had some of these sentiments by a lot of people. How have you dealt with them? And what have you done differently?
I think for us, what we've done is to, one, ensure that governance is very critical. We have not toyed around with governance at all as an entity. We are, of course, regulated, and by virtue of being regulated, we are exposed, our books are exposed to scrutiny by regulators, and they are able to guide in terms of our decision making. Then, of course, professional competence in terms of ethical background of the institution. We do not compromise this. We spend a lot of resource to ensure that we get the best from the market in terms of human capital. And we never stop in terms of educating and training, such that knowledge is permanently being impacted on them. We don't compromise on this. Trust is a very, very strong word. And I can tell you, sir, trust is actually driven leadership to the lowest level. And what I've done is to ensure that I would not put my over 30 years experience to jeopardy, particularly when it comes to my own integrity. And we do leadership by example in terms of trust. And we have put so many things in place to ensure that every customer that comes across us can beat his chest and say, yes, Page would not disappoint. And again, I think the regulatory authorities have also been preaching governance, and they're preaching it all across board. So I think with more of our industry players getting involved with this thing, I think trust would become more acceptable as we go along.
Excellent point. Thank you, Mr. Akintemi. On the other side of trusts for service providers like yours, of course, will be technology innovation that you have mentioned. And then in this day and age of cyber attacks, people always wanting to be one step ahead to just make sure they find a way to hack you out of business. Just kindly share your experience. What is the Scud missile that you have used against this cyber security phishing attacks on your business?
I think the one basic antidote we have used is continuous testing. Because the truth is that there is no one system that is actually foolproof, not one. So, but it is only when you are continuously testing. So we have developed some of our technology people as even hackers themselves. So for every mechanism of security, virtual security we put in place, we are permanently testing it to ensure that we're able to identify its flaws, develop bugs, anti-attack bugs, and actually put them in place. So if you don't continuously test yourself, and like you rightly noted, sir, innovation is a key word for us in Page. So we have multiple channels. We have our mobile app, we have our internet banking platform, we have our card system, and these are channels of access to our systems. So, and all these things are sitting in the cloud. So apart from you building physical securities around your data, you also have to build a lot of virtual security around your data to prevent. And what I've also observed over the years is that a lot of times the issue of trust is always compromised with an internal factor, which is your own staff. So again, you also have to continue to monitor your internal process too, not just testing your system for hackers, but monitor the internal process to ensure that you're able to actually prevent the occurrence of such a thing.
Very, very interesting. The discipline over controls, internal audit, internal assets. Very nice one. And thanks for all the insights that you have given. I want to ask you, what would be your last word of advice generally on this subject, and specifically to give to entrepreneurs who hope to access credits to scale their businesses and then continue to play their role in economic development?
Yeah, I think SMEs have to continue to improve their eligibility for loans. And a lot of the points I mentioned earlier in terms of bookkeeping and all those things are the things that shows a good level of preparedness on their own part for funding from banks, government agencies, private equity firms, or even any type of foreign investments or local investments that want to come into their sector. So they need to improve their eligibility, improve their documentation, improve their processes, improve their structures. And this they can only do by one, they can have very efficient, I'll say, cash management system to ensure that they're well protected. Two, they have to keep very well updated and accurate financial records. A lot of them lack this. And you don't need to be a chartered accountant for you to keep a basic financial record. And we, if need be, consult a chartered accountant to put it together for you. And they help you guide. And that is why ICAN's education and support system would actually come to play. Then a lot of SMEs do not have any kind of continuity plan. So what happens is that something happens to the head or the owner, and the company disintegrates. So there must be some kind of business continuity plan, such that if this happens, you have a fallback. So which is why, as they grow and they improve their efficiency, they could also start considering other businesses also. But I think it's also important, very critical, that their business model is tried and tested, and it is viable, and actually realistic to the happenings of today. Because if it is not, it might not actually be able to withstand the test of time.
Great point, Mr. Segun Akintemi. So nice of you to come and share your wealth of experience spanning 30 years in practical demonstration of how to, what to, and then what to prevent. The Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria will always want to call on you to come and share more and more as we move on the ICAN on air. And to the viewers, we are still very much on. We are going to be going on a short video clip that will show you a bit more on ICAN on air, how you can advertise. Please take notes of those numbers that will be screened through your screen, that you can contact us to advertise your goods and services, and they will get value for money spent. Stay put, we'll soon be back. Thank you, online viewers, friends of our profession, Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria. ICAN on air today on this segment has critically examined the role of retail financial providers in developing Nigerian entrepreneurial businesses. And one of the key planks of the prescription by Mr. Akintemi is the fact that governance is key, and that we must continually look at our internal processes, internal compromises, what we call discipline over controls, internal audit, and that the books must be clearly open for regulators to have a look. And the symbiotic relationship between regulators and serious-minded, financial providers as in his business. He further mentioned the fact that the challenges, of course, that SMEs have is in keeping books of accounts. And the Institute has developed robust consultancy aspects as part of our training, the ATS program, in how to begin to put your books in ways and manners that it will be easy for you to look at your stock, your receivables, your payables, because these are all veritable source of money. And you don't have to be an accountant. You don't have to know it all. By a simple call to a chartered accountant, and I'd like to underline that a chartered accountant of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, who has gone through the mills of ensuring that one, integrity and accuracy continues to be our motto, they will give this to you and it's good value for money. Now, we also looked at the situations where it was clear that you do your bit, I do my bit, and over 90% of people that contribute to the GDP of Nigeria are doing their little bits here and there, is a recipe for growth and is the way that other developed societies have gone far. And those are some of the things that we need to do. I want to also thank very fervently our online participants. You want to also mention this to your friends, you know. I see that some of our friends from Taraba are here. I see that quite a number of our chapters are also here, you know, district societies. Please always make sure that you mention it to somebody who should mention to somebody else, that by coming to the ICAN social media platform, choose and like ICAN, and this will continually be fed onto you. In saying that, ICAN on Air, as advertised, comes on twice in a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays at the same time. And so our next presentation will be on Thursday, and which happens to be our last for the year. That will be Thursday, December 30, 2021. Time remains 6 p.m. West African time. We go live, and then of venue still continues to be the social media handles, like we have had, you know, at this time. I want to also say that what we are going to be presenting is a collage of our offerings of ICAN on Air since our debut on October 5, 2021. By that, I'm saying, yes, we made our debut on 5th of October 2021, and we've had close to about 1920 episodes for you to see the quality of guests that we have brought, the quality of interaction and intercourse in terms of the kind of questions that people have been asking. Of course, online participants are asking for more. I want to acknowledge the president of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria. I'm talking of Mrs. Comfort Olu Eyitayo, CFA, CFE, FCA, MNI, the visionary president leading a visionary council who has bettered this ICAN on Air as part of giving back to society what we have been robustly given in our education, continuous education. So you want to tell somebody, to also tell somebody that yes, is the same ICAN, same page, different chapters that is on. I also want to kindly acknowledge my editorial team, my editorial chair, members of the editorial team that has continually supported, working day and night to support this initiative, and of course, our back end. Yes, we are going to be unveiling our last episode of ICAN on Air to showcase what we have done through our sweat, how we have benefited others. And let me leave you with this quotation. Open quote. Financial institutions must be able to navigate a seamless digital platform that goes far beyond a miniaturized online banking offering. End of quotes. And that's attributable to Jim Marrows. I always say this: be the change you like to see. And of course, until we meet again at the already advertised ICAN on Air program, December 30th, 2021, the last for this year, I say please play safe, remain healthy, be conscious, and care for one another. I remain Akin Fatunke, your anchor on ICAN on Air. Bye for now.